Ojo wabno kweni dis nakas makododom saging de binjaba anishna bakweni dao. Mishomus nok mishim do chimigwetchen dan gimis young nesewen. Chimigwetchen dan gimis young bebamanzowin. Chimigwetch kinegego and kujignabian kinegego cook me qua ebido, migwetch ken na bah, migwetch came moen, migwetch case up with wizopong. Migwetch yon the king, McQueen Mong kinegego yon the king. Schwen mishnang nad moshanang we do kushnang to swim when a gate and knock the gay young when a gate ni gone to nabiong when a gate to McQueen my young if a bond is jikman p and dawat. Nad moshanang we do kushnang when a gay to nabiong when a gate in the system on the king at one is young like Indian with me on the king and McQueen on me Monday equid on we when to mebdek manda be a young one be giggy young homie wet shimnido homie wet shimnido homie wet shimnido homie wet shimnido homie wet.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, Council, we like to welcome Faye. Welcome Faye to the council table. So welcome, and so we do have an agenda here before us. Is there a mover to accept the agenda? Unless anyone has any additions, is there any additions that anyone has? And if not, Jerry?
Sorry, Chief, if I could add Janine's department to the agenda. I know that Council Previous gave us some direction, but just need some updated direction in terms of the current occupancy.
I also have one addition in regards to the SETI group. I guess I just need an acknowledgement for the Friendship Accord, and I'll send that out like momentarily. Thank you.
Okay, so there was a mover that moved that. That was Cherie. Is there a seconder, Teresa? To accept the agenda as present. Is there anyone have any travel acknowledgements? Lester?
I have a travel modification. I realize that Joint Council retreat is this week. I also have a conflict with AFLDC on the 10th. There's a dinner meeting at 5:30. They've already booked me a room for Woodbine, I believe it is. And then on the 11th, there'll be an all-day board meeting with AFLDC, so I'll attend the the day tomorrow part of the day tomorrow at Collingwood on my way down, but I won't need the accommodations at Collingwood. And I'll come back Thursday for the final day of the retreat. So I don't know if Faye, she's had accommodations booked for her yet or not. She might be able to take that if possible.
Yeah, I think that should work for that. Yeah.
But I'll attend the retreat as much as possible, but I'll also attend the AFLDC board meeting.
Okay. Okay, so I see on here the business arising from previous minutes. Is that you, Jerry?
Yeah, Chief, it's just a bit of housekeeping. Council previously had provided authorization for us to utilize the works budget for them to purchase the snow equipment, but the BCR was silent on the previous years, and so Lisa just provided some wording that I've attached in red to update to the amounts that we got, and if Council could consider passing that, then we can have copy and paste that into the meeting minutes.
Okay, you moved that, Sonia? Okay, Sonia moved that. Is there a seconder for that? Cherie? Any other questions, comment? Is there any opposition? I'm seeing none, so that motion will carry. The next one we have here is the adoption of the minutes. Oh, you didn't do it? Okay. Okay, so the minutes will be resent to everybody? tonight? Okay. Okay, the department reports, is that you, Melissa? Or who? Jerry? Is that you?
Thanks, Chief and Council. Attached to your council package is attachment A, B, C, D, and E. D and E have already been approved, and I believe that council has had the attachment A and C for maybe about the past 2 months now of the information report. This dovetail from the previous term of council when they had amalgamated and approved the Integrated Department of Health and Wellness, as well as the Department of Community and Social Services. The direction for the previous term of council, which we continued, was that there was appetite before the end of this calendar year to look at continued amalgamations through the BDC report as well as the new vision report. So for awareness and just in the conversation, we've attached attachment A for the proposed Department of Operations and Infrastructure. And this is information pulled together from both those reports, as well as what's actually happening on the ground in discussion with some council members. And if council would be open to that, then a draft Director of Infrastructure and Operations, and that would start to round out the director level as we create that organization review. And similarly for the Department of Education and Early Years, there seems to be some synergies between daycares, language and learning, and education. And just looking for discussion and direction from council in terms of next steps, if this is still the vision and direction council wishes to proceed. So I'll pause there, Chief.
Any questions? Feedback? I don't see any or hear any, so, Sonia?
Sorry, Jerry, is this just for the structure, or do you have people lined up to be in place for it yet?
So with respect to the Director of Operations Infrastructure, with respect now that Tim has voluntarily moved on, that would free up some of the funding to try to necessitate so we can have that director. In discussion with some of the team internally and externally, it's not clear if we need a replacement manager for works as opposed to maybe a lead or a foreman or a supervisor. So if we have the front line of the maintainers and then we have the supervisor or manager, then we'd have the director that would oversee the departments. And then with the current capacity that is now available through the salary of the manager, that would help to, I guess, advance the Department of Operations Infrastructure. Now, in terms of the Department of Education or Early Years, this would be more conceptual at this point. I don't know that there's anybody right now within the team that would be comfortable stepping up to be that new director, but if there is a subset of council or concurrence of council that would be open to this, then we can start those exploratory conversations with Melissa and Mindy to understand where we need to get to and if there's anything missing from that proposed. But the Director of Operations Infrastructure would be hypothetically something if council is open to. We would have a posting, for this Friday and into the new year to close on Friday, January 3rd, and then into the new year have an interview panel, and then we'd be looking to council because these are director and officer positions. The Director of Infrastructure and Operations, per best practice, usually you'd have a committee chair of council on there so we can get the right person. So for the Director of Operations and Infrastructure, I feel confident that we would be able to move forward and mature and visualize and have that come to fruition, where education early years would take a little bit more massaging, especially with the movement at the daycare right now.
Okay, is there a motion or anything that you need
So you're
passed?
gonna do a posting, hopefully on Friday?
Hope to have the posting, if council supports this, for this Friday, and then have it close on Friday, January 3rd, so we have a good timeline, because if it closes during the Christmas break, we'll have people more frustrated that they have to wait 2 weeks. So it would be our motivation to post that for this Friday if council supports that posting.
is it possible, review the job posting before you send it out?
Yeah, for sure. I've attached it in the council's package as a attachment B. And this is what we've pulled together from other places. Some First Nations already have this type of idea. So we just looked at a couple of the job descriptions that have already been developed and tried to understand what we need in Saugeen and just try to pull it apart. But certainly it's a living document and can be updated as council wishes.
Sorry, Jerry, just a quick note on the timing to close it. The offices will be closed Friday, January 3rd, will they not?
So yes, we'll be closed on the 3rd, but we thought if we had the posting closed on January 3rd, then we open back up on the 6th. And then Candace and the team could start to push those out to the interview panel. And then by the end of the first week of January 6th, we'll be able to contact those who have been identified for interview.
It's just if certain people want to like hand deliver, it would deter that, so you just might want to keep that noted.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, good point. Thanks. I overlooked that. So perhaps extending it for an additional week and have it close on the Friday, January 10th. Then that'll give us about a month posting. And then we can look at regrouping and have those resumes sent out the first week of the 13th of January. And for this position, not to belabor it, and no disrespect to anyone who's no longer here right now, but we need minimum road safety standards as one example. And there are some things that we just don't have developed. And so while we're able to use this as not so much of a training opportunity, but somebody who has the motivation, the willingness to be open to developing the minimum standards, we can certainly, but we are involved in some lawsuits right now specific to not having minimum road safety standards. And so we're just looking to tease that next person out, and this next person we really want to have as a band member to work with the team and really try to refresh and update it. And we thought if we could have a longer posting, we'd be able to attract a wider net in terms of community members who might be off community. But surely can take our direction from council.
Well, we'll just acknowledge you'll post it on Friday, the position. So,
And then if, I'm sorry, Chief, you asked a question, but if, based on the BCRs and the policies, any reorganization would require a BCR. So if council is supportive of the recommendations in attachment A, then we'd be requesting a BCR if that's possible, because it just has the reorganization and restructure.
okay. Did you prepare wording for that already, Jay? Or
Sorry, I was a weak link with that. But
Oh, yeah,
maybe just if council is comfortable with supporting the proposed department integrations of operations infrastructure as outlined in Appendix A, then that should hopefully be sufficient enough for Leona to capture in the meeting minutes. And as well as if council has comfort with the Department of Education early years, we could also request a BCR for that. Now, even though we don't have a director identified at this point, with some of the movement on the team and some of the new funding investments, I think that we would be able to leverage the funding through the finance team to find the funds for that position, but just don't have anybody at the top of mind right now. So if council was comfortable with that, or if they want us to update attachment C for the Department of Education earlier, we can certainly do that. But I know that was put together by some of the feedback from the previous term of council and some of the new council members in terms of synergetic opportunities. So I don't know if there'd be appetite of council to approve that as well, Chief.
okay. Lester, move that. Okay. And that's to approve that template structure that you have. Okay, so is there a seconder to that? Sonia? Any other comment, feedback, any opposition? I'm seeing or hearing none, so that motion will carry.
All right, now it's my turn. So that's really great. I think that that is moving forward. I know we've talked for a long time about reorganizing the structure of the organization just to better assist and manage the staff and administration. So that kind of leads me into the next kind of agenda item here, which is the committee overview. So it is in your package there. I wanted to kind of have a more kind of open conversation on this topic, as now that you've kind of started, well, now that you've approved 4 of the kind of department structures, it's kind of would make sense that those committees would kind of align with those structures themselves. And then additionally, there's, the issue of not all committees having terms of references. And it's been discussed through many, many years. And it was even brought up at the program managers meeting when I was doing the strategic planning presentation, the issue of the length of the terms and how it creates inconsistency and stalls progress. So I wanted to kind of open the floor and see if anybody had any specific questions or things that if they had a chance to review the kind of spreadsheet. I kind of did a current committees and what you guys had posted for this given year, and then some proposed committees and proposed like length of terms, and then I've also kind of like outlined just the given committees right now, because there's just some questions and there's some vacancies that I noticed too, so I just wanted to kind of get that on everybody's radar. I think that sometimes each term of council, there's a bit of a stall, I guess, in terms of getting those committees going. So if the terms of the committees were structured at maybe a 3-year length, that might create that consistency. Sorry. And then as well, for the committees that do have terms of references, they're all kind of different templates. So I think that, in terms of being organized and moving forward, if each term a council comes in, that those terms of references are in place, they're all kind of templated on the same template, and, the members are there, it would just kind of create a fluency in the work as new councils come in. So is there any kind of questions? Well, I can just walk through each committee if there's no questions at this point. Okay, so the Health and Wellness Committee, we would then kind of, all of the items that fall under the Health and Wellness Department, I would assume would kind of fall within that committee. So the terms of reference would reflect that, if that makes sense to everybody. And then I don't know, for regular committees like this, are we hoping to do a longer term, like a 3-year or a 4-year? Like, what is council's appetite in terms of extending the terms of all committees? So,
Well, for consistency, what you're talking about with the turnover all the time, it'd be better because the council turns over every 2 years, but I think the people of the committee of the work would probably be better suited to go 3 to 4 years, I would say. Or I see you had 5 years on one of them.
I agree. I think extending the term would be good, because then you wouldn't have such a big hurdle to jump over when a new term of council comes in. The committee members would already be informed as to what was going on.
Chief, I think last term the governance committee had recommended that to council. I think they accepted it to look at a 3-year term for the committees. And I think that was accepted. I don't know if we acknowledged or it was done by way of resolution, but it came by way of a recommendation, I think, from the committee when we did our terms of reference for it. I just maybe, I could do it. Just an acknowledgement. So yeah, I think we did acknowledge that, the 3 years.
So extended 3 years?
So, yeah, there's a couple on here. So if we're looking at the proposed committees, I mean, what I'm suggesting is that I could go in and kind of help draft these terms of references that reflect the work that will be done and the departments that fall under the committees. And then I can, then spread out to the committees, and then they can, edit or make changes as needed or whatever, and then bring back to get those terms of references approved. But just getting that legwork done for those committees. But so health and wellness, community and social services would be one, as that's a department. Operations infrastructure, there is already an existing terms of reference for that one. And it was approved for a 5-year length of term, and that was because it's longer projects. So those would be more like, infrastructure installments. So that's why the term is 5 years for that specific one. The education and early years would be 3. Finance and audit is currently 3. They do have a terms of reference. The governance is 3. And then police, I was suggesting that we kind of add emergency services onto that committee, because now that we have, a dedicated fire chief and a emergency services coordinator, they're doing a lot of work that would really that they would like it would be beneficial if they had the support of a committee. And then I was entertaining the idea of that committee being a 5-year term, just because we're still in the process of trying to get policing going, and it's more of it's an important kind of file, I think. So I'm just I don't know if you want to do that one for a 5-year or not. I guess that's a question. Or just do the 3-year like the remaining.
I'd probably like to see a 3-year term.
Okay, so we could look at that one for the 3-year. And then housing. So housing would kind of typically fall under operations and infrastructure. So my question is, do we dissolve that and pull that up into that specific committee, or would that be a separate one? I'm also trying to kind of make sense of these committees, so you guys aren't having 15, 20 committees that you guys are allocating. I'm trying to make it, make more sense in terms of the workload for you guys. So thoughts on housing being pulled up into operations and infrastructure, or being its own?
Sorry, I'm gonna actually bounce back for a minute. Just for the policing, 3 years, does sound good, except that we had the policing committee meeting Friday or Thursday or Friday when we had it. And to me, the timelines for stuff happening, I feel like a 4 or 5 year would be better, just because the timelines of all that stuff happening are very, it's not gonna happen within the 2 years. So I think the same thing, if, for example, next election, nobody on the police committee was sitting in this room again, at least we would have the committee members that would know where we are and what's going on in the process. So for me, a 5-year term would work better for the police and, Police and Emergency Services Committee. That's just my thoughts.
Just the insert right now, we just got an email from Nuri in regards to the Sauble Beach appeal. He just informed that the appeal was a complete victory for Saugeen. And so, and he said the nation prevailed on every issue. Congratulations. So it's pretty good news for everyone. Sonia?
Are we gonna get a news release out for that then?
Yeah, I can send them something right now to prepare something for us. So it's good news, exciting. Yeah. So Sonia mentioned something about the 5 years for the police committee. Is everyone okay? Acknowledge that? Randall?
Do we have applicants, Chief? Because I think up until now, it's kind of functioned as an ad hoc of the council. Do we have members who applied for it?
I think there might have been. Yeah, I think there was some people that applied
Yeah,
for it.
yeah, for the 5-year term to work, we actually need kind of committee members. For that, we have some? Okay, yeah, because we would ideally want 3, a minimum of 3, I think, to carry that over.
Yeah, another thing that I'm proposing that would go in these terms of references is that that there be 5 community members on each committee, like a max of 5. That just kind of creates at least like once you have too many, it kind of gets a little bit hard to kind of control it. So I think a max of 5 would be proposed to be in terms of references for all committees, except that would exclude the youth and the knowledge keepers, though. So noted, due to the fact that we're still in a longer kind of process for getting police back in the community, we'll go with the 5-year term then. So back to housing. Do we want to dissolve that into the Operations and Infrastructure Committee?
I like that idea. I think it makes sense.
I guess the chair's not here, which is Letitia, so being mindful of that, I would keep it separate for the time being. Because we're looking at a whole bunch of different projects for, like you got the rentals, you got the mortgages, you've got people seeking funding or outside funding. So housing is a big committee in the community when we're looking at lack of housing and homelessness. So right now, I'd be comfortable just leaving it as a housing committee.
Sonia?
I'm just actually wondering when it was separated, because I know when I was on council, so like 4 years ago, I was the chair of the Operations and Infrastructure, and housing was under that umbrella, like it was housing, Works Department, water. We had that already as the structure, so I'm just wondering when it got separated like that, because it worked well. Because what happened with that committee was all of the, like for projects and whatever, even housing projects, whatever projects, all of those services need to get together, and they all need to be on board with, the infrastructure, the water, so it worked really well. So I'm just wondering why it was separated. I understand what Teresa's saying, it is a big file, but to have the Waterworks, Works Department and all that involved in the project so that everybody has knowledge is I think very important.
Any other input from anybody?
I guess the discussion was about the ever-changing council members, right? So this is a classic example of that right now. So Letitia's not here today. So in the event that she wasn't part of the housing committee, I mean, the committee would still have to function, right? It doesn't hinge on the council members. So that's just the point I'd like to make about it. So we're trying to streamline that today. And this is one step towards it. We don't, I mean, for Letitia's sake, I mean, for today, obviously, we'd need some of her input going forward. But I was just trying to make that point, that it doesn't hinge on the council members. Like, this is what we're trying to do. The operations of the band will continue with or without us. So I think that's the point we're trying to make here. Randall?
Yeah, I think historically, Chief, that committee was kind of a merged committee in housing infrastructure. It's had different titles over the years. And I believe that was kind of one of the area, it was when it functioned as housing and infrastructure, or whatever we're going to call it, it gave a conduit for roads and other departments to come through. Otherwise, they don't have that, right? And so you had some of these overlapping issues that would occur from time to time, not always, but sometimes. And so, in a different time, yeah, there's kind of been sporadic. Sometimes it's housing and then just housing. But then roads and other departments didn't have any, where to come, waterworks didn't have anywhere to go, roads and so on. So I think that's why it was housing and infrastructure, for a while, and then whatever it is, now. So it has operated where it had, multiple roles. Obviously, housing was the biggest component of that, but at least you had a mechanism where roads and waterworks and others could come through, and often those would happen. I think we did that, we might have streamlined that when we were doing the water project, right? And had those kind of merged, because it made sense at the time. So it did function that way in the past at one point.
Especially now when we just passed the infrastructure and operations director, it all falls together, housing, public works, water. So it is in effect all together at this point. So it would, to me, make total sense to have that as a committee, because it encompasses all of those infrastructure and operations departments, including housing.
Chief, just one thing, and my apologies for being late. But I did want to flag that the title of director, that you might want, this is something I may want to follow up and just kind of get some general legal guidance on that. There are certain legal connotations when you have someone carry the title of director. And Saugeen's been on this path before. I think Saugeen was sued once because we changed the job description, and the person sued because they said, no, I was a director, I should be treated as a director, and that was an issue, right? And so obviously with a director comes higher compensation, a number of other things. It's very difficult to remove a director, right? And certainly the other side of it, if you're a director, is not necessarily you're not entitled to reinstatement. But there are certain legal connotations with having that title, so I would maybe just encourage admin to follow up on that. And I get that you want to have a department head, but maybe director is not the appropriate title. So just food for thought.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that housing will kind of come up into operations and infrastructure, as it will properly align with the past department that has just been identified. I think it would be good, because then what I've kind of noticed over the years is housing was kind of getting too much in the weeds of items that shouldn't have been, that should have just been dealt with departmentally instead of committee-wise. So I think we need to kind of pull back and ensure that what is within the mandates are what is going on within the committees. So, in terms of references will help with that. So now moving on, the Economic Development Committee. So I wasn't quite sure. I know that Brad does still want to support, or does still want the support of a committee in terms of, moving forward with entrepreneurship and the IBA. But now that we have an Economic Development Corporation that will soon be, moving forward, hopefully, it was kind of unclear how those two will kind of work together, or what work will be done in the committee and what will be done with the corporation. So that one I might pause on, because I'd like to get more conversation with Brad on that in terms of how he sees that moving forward. So the Knowledge Keepers, that one, this is kind of one of the activities that have been identified within the strategic plan. And it was to kind of have just a committee of knowledge keepers that, you know, staff can go to, community members, youth can, you know, reach out and have that connection. So I was just more kind of suggesting that that specific committee just be members only, as it's not really something that needs to be chaired too much. The chair could more be, you know, somebody within that committee. But that's just, you know, a suggestion. We don't need to kind of move on that one specifically, that as it is an activity within the strategic plan that we can have a more thorough discussion on at a later point. And then, so, because what was put out there was recreation, youth, and elders, so I kind of pulled that apart to kind of, in terms of recreation, that would again fall under infrastructure and operations, but powwow specifically, I think could be its own committee that would just kind of, you know, be comprised of maybe staff and members and/or counselors. I was just, again, trying to kind of pull a little bit of the things off of your guys' plate, as I know both in community and joint council-wise, there's a lot of portfolios. So that's a suggestion. Just wondering what your thoughts are in terms of just having a specific powwow committee. I feel as though Rochelle said that they pulled it out last term too, actually, but I don't know if that was ever recorded in the minutes or moved any specific way. Yeah. It's just, I know that there's been a lot of there's been feedback each year kind of that like, that we don't have a flyer out in time and that, you know, things are done last minute. So if there was a specific committee just focused on powwow that, you know, was comprised of people that, you know, were used to doing it and had those contacts and reach outs, I think it might flow better in terms of getting the information out in a timely manner and getting the issues done that need to be handled.
Just wondering, Chief, if there might be consideration to expand it beyond powwow and have it more focused on a broader scale as a community events type committee that would work with the table and administration when certain things come up to work to plan events and so on. So it's not just, because often we have that and we don't have like a community coordinator who would kind of coordinate all that stuff. And so if there's a committee that could actively do that and work on those things, that'd be great. You know, coordinate various things like, you know, around seasonal events when we have those and things like that. So it's not kind of left who's going to do it, who's doing what. Also work to coordinate things around, you know, Indigenous Day and Treaty Week and things like that. It'd be good to have a dedicated group that's their focus, right? And that way we know it's there, and they could also work with on the powwow as well. So, because I know that's a big undertaking. So, but we also have those events throughout the year, and it's kind of like who's going to coordinate it, and it's kind of you're waiting to see who's going to do it, and so it'd be good to have someone dedicated to do that, like a committee, if folks are interested in it.
Comment, Chief. We've talked about ceremonial grounds for quite some time, and you know, every year the construction of an arbor, like it's kind of crazy, spending a lot of resources and doing that. And maybe at some point, this, you know, the issue of a permanent ceremonial ground would be, you know, brought up and developed so that, you know, for every event, not just the powwow, there'll be other events that you could still use those grounds for as well, right? So, like other communities, like Kenora, for example, they have a permanent facility there. And anyway, just leaving it at that.
Yeah, just to let everybody know too, I think I was at the youth and leadership delegation awards night or whatever. But anyways, Kat told me that Bruce Power is building like an arena or something like that for Nawash, like the outside. So they got an X amount of dollars, and she let me know that Nawash would probably be doing that. Everybody else will probably catch wind of it eventually. So But I guess they're, like, how it worked for them, I think, don't quote me correctly on it, but I'm pretty sure like it was like 4 million that, for the outside, of their arena, outside, somewhere around that. But I think, Nawash kind of just, or Bruce Power kind of created like an agreement with them where they would kind of borrow or pay it off over time or something like that. Because it cost, I think it was $1 million they were going to get, but they asked for more, and so Bruce Power fronted the cash, and then they would pay that forward. So just an FYI, I'm just sharing that with the council that, like, so Nawash has already reached out and got things rolling for that. And they were anticipating that once Saugeen caught wind of it, that, like, they would probably ask for the same or something, whether it's for the amphitheater project or could be anything, whatever anyone deems. I'm just sharing that news, I guess. Forgot to mention that. Go ahead, Audra.
On the Bruce Power thing, Chief, the funding? Yeah. I think we got to have a better coordinated conversation with Bruce Power on that, so it's not. Paul flagged that with me a while ago. And his concern was it's a kind of, and I agree with him, that's the kind of thing that create dissension between the two communities. So there should be a clear process for that, where it's all up front, and Bruce Power's not kind of waiting, well, maybe we're anticipating Saugeen might come to us, like, no, you should know that's the case. And that's the kind of thing that creates dissension and only feeds the narrative that we've had multiple conversations about at this table, right? And so, glad you raised that.
Have a comment, Roger, or no? Yeah, so I think Lester's idea about some kind of grounds is something that would be practical, and because it happens every year, and every year people are always scrambling around to build an arbor or to build or construct. It would be nice just to have something that's permanent. Is that something that we can kind of organize, or?
So just a
Just, I'm kind of
comment.
going off.
Yeah, to add to that. So we did do schematic drawings a few years ago to apply for a grant to build an arena. We weren't successful, but within those drawings, it was proposed to expand the powwow grounds where they currently are. Take down the hills, cut out some trees some more, and expand those grounds, and potentially make something more permanent there. So the powwow grounds would fall under the new director of operations and infrastructure. So that could be one of the tasks that they explore, is exploring funding and moving forward on that. So that's...
Sonia?
Yeah, and so maybe the new powwow grounds would be Saugeen's outdoor arena. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay. Is there any more, Melissa?
Yep, you got, I'm with you all morning. So just, I'm going to take that away, Randall, and think about community events then, perhaps for that committee. So then moving down, we got beach advisory. So that one, I don't know, I think you guys were working on a terms of reference for that one, Randall?
For which one?
The beach advisory, but it was acknowledged maybe for a three-year?
Yeah, I think now that it's no longer an ad hoc committee, I think that's the first order of business we'll do is once we set the committee, we'll do a terms of reference. The members that were there served as, I don't think we specified a time period for them because it was ad hoc. So I seen there's a couple folks who expressed interest in doing that. I think it'd be good to have a terms of reference for it and figure out what the role of it is, because initially the purpose of that committee on an ad hoc basis was to help facilitate the transfer of the North Beach, just to make sure things were coordinated in place. So like procedurally, like the maintenance and things like that, and then looking at other things. But now I think it'll have to take on another function, which is what are kind of the opportunities that can be generated. So I think That's something Lands, I know, and ECDev would welcome, is a committee to work with to do some of that stuff. And so, you know, a lot of this, I think, can get to a place where it's more of an administrative function, because we did adopt, I think, Brad's plan, and I think that was when Les was chief there. And so we acknowledge that that plan is there. It's just the issue for that is finding some resources. I know Brad's put a number of proposals together and submitted some things. So that's just kind of wait and see. But we did accept that plan, and that plan would apply to the entire portion of the beach. So, but now that it's going to be permanent, yeah, absolutely, there would be, I think, a terms of reference for it, and figure out what the mandate needs to be, and bring that back and have a conversation with council about that.
So I'm just wondering then, would that then maybe just still be an ad hoc, and then eventually, once it gets to that mature state, would kind of fall, because it would be a revenue-making place, fall under the corp, or no?
Well, I think realistically, a lot of the things in there we talked about, you know, when certain requests come up, those are, I think, are administrative in function. I know Jerry was working with Brad and Kirk on some of those things. Those aren't necessarily things that would have to go through a committee or the council if there's a process, clearly articulated process for that. Obviously, council could set the parameters of kind of, these are the go, no-go areas, so that administration's aware of that. So when they do that, they can carry that out. I think if there's some strategic things you wanted to do, then maybe a committee's involved there, but it's, the ad hoc committee was kind of really serving that purpose, just to make sure that things were transitioned the way they should, because there was a number of things that happened in terms of, we had to do maintenance, kind of hit the ground running on just getting it operational. The conversation, obviously, where we left off at the end of the term was, okay, what do we do to make sure that we're maximizing opportunities economically from it, recognizing, I think, a lot of folks still wanted to respect the boundaries of the decision that was made, not to necessarily allow cars on the beach, but other things you can generate revenue, right? And so I think one of the things they developed was a plan to put parking just to the right of the main sign down there. Kirk had mapped all that out. We had had some conversation with some folks that would put a manual gate in, that'd be an automatic pay system. And then you'd also have parking to the left down to Red Road that way. And I think on the parking revenue alone, Brad and Kirk had determined that it would make a significant portion of revenue for the season. So just on that, we wouldn't have to go too much further than that. But I know they have a plan on that, but I don't know where it's, I think, one of the things that would have to happen is follow up on the folks with the gates, so that could be implemented right away in this season. We're not waiting last minute. So that's where we kind of left the conversation, because I think everyone, the consensus around the table was, what are the ways we can maximize some of those opportunities down there? Given that the most obvious would be to start charging walk-on. So it may be, so to your point, it could still function ad hoc in term. In which case, what I would suggest we do is just see if there's a willingness from the members that were there, if they want to continue on doing that. But we didn't set a specific thing. But if it's ad hoc, then I would propose even then we would have a generic terms of reference, just for so everyone's aware what it is and what it's not. And because I know some folks are saying, well, doesn't the committee, that wasn't the mandate of that committee to come up with all those options and things like that, wasn't its function, right? It was just to do that transition after we won the case, make sure everything was smooth. And once that was done, that was that, right? So if we're going to look at those other things, then I think it would need a terms of reference.
Yeah, because I think the beach, Solid Park fell under ECDev previously. Again, I'm going back to when I was here. It was ECDev, because we came up with the plan for parking lots off-site, shuttling people in. Like, we had this whole plan, and that's been, and that's what you've adopted. So that's good. So it's just a matter of getting it in place, because I know that I've heard a lot of frustrated members regarding the beach in the last few years. Like, what are we doing? Like, and it's very confusing because we don't know who's allowed on the beach. Are we allowed on the beach? We're getting kicked off the beach. Like, there's all these things that kind of feel very chaotic. So I think dedicating some real time to this issue before, right now, leading up to the opening, like the summer, the May 24, so we know what we're gonna do, especially with the East Boundary being part of it now. We need to really up our game, I think. And just a little bit off topic, just while I'm thinking about it. Now that we have been successful with that, I think we need to start, and it's not today, I'm just saying it before I forget it. I think we need to start thinking now about what we're gonna do about changing the sign down there. Just saying.
Jerry to organize a chain and hook it up to the trucks? Or some dynamite?
Okay, so what I heard that maybe for now, we're going to keep that as ad hoc and see where that goes. Eventually might kind of come up into ACDEV. Okay.
I think a lot of those things are already in place. Like the ECDEV committee brought forward Brad's initial beach plan. I think that touches on what Sonia was saying. I think that's already been accepted. It just has to be implemented. Obviously, that would be extended now to the north portion of the beach. I think the immediate way to generate park revenue there, the easiest way is to generate that parking because that's where they had parking there before, is the right of that sign. We would also extend it to the left of the sign down to Red Road. Kirk's already mapped out how many and there would be a limit of how many cars could be in there. He's already mapped out how many cars that would be and how much we would charge a day. And I think his projected revenue was pretty significant, right? You'd have a small amount in the, around June, but the peak times during July and August, that's where you'd generate most of your revenue in. So I think it was a good plan. I think the issue was we had to get someone to come in. We were supposed to meet with the folks who do the gates, right? So, and I think that's something Brittany and Brad and Kirk were working on. So that might be something to follow up and see if they've had that conversation, because ideally we would want to have it in place in the spring so we can hit the ground running with that. And now that we won across the board, they can't say anything about it.
Great. So then we have so I know that we have the United Church Committee, like the rebuild for the church. But it's a little unclear on how this one is going to operate in terms of, like, I know that there's a fundraising group that's kind of gone forward and begun that work, and that's great. But, and I know that there is, a separation between the United Church and the amphitheater, but realistically, in terms of any kind of business case for, revenue for weddings or events, those two do need to intertwine at some point. So I'm just wondering, if these two are going to be an ad hoc committee together. They were previously. So I just, thoughts on that? Because Les and Randall, you guys are the chair of the current church, but I don't know what you guys have any thoughts on that.
Can I add that at the United Church, there exists right now, and we saw them yesterday, they've got a board that's in operation where they've already got an executive in place, and they were in full attendance here at a ceremony that took place yesterday. So I don't know how that fits in with this committee when they're already in full existence. They're an elected board of their own within the church, so I don't know how this fits.
Well, I guess that's my question, is because there's a bunch of different groups doing different work, so how are they going to work together or speak to each other in terms of helping move these projects forward on that site? And that's kind of what I want to kind of clear up, because, we don't want one group doing one thing and another group doing another. And, they really need to be communicating and speaking to each other in terms of, to produce that collective vision. I think that everybody has their own needs for the church, and that's, great. But at the end of the day, like, we need to kind of make sure that things are moving fluidly and collectively as a group and as how we see fit, so.
I'm going to interject again that the church has been united since its existence within the Presbyterian stream of things. And I don't know where that's come into play, where we make that determination of what that building's to be. It's insured under the United Church. There's funding that's flowing through the United Church. So with respect to that, I think we need the inclusion of the people that are involved with that.
It wasn't insured under the United Church, though. It was insured under us, and there was a confusion. So this is what I mean. A conversation should be had with all parties at the table in the future, but there was a confusion because there was no full ownership under the United Church. It was a confusion as to who was actually ownership of that church, and so it was under ownership of Saugeen, but dedicated as a United Church, and it was under the insurance of Saugeen. And so there's unclear lines there as that need to be cleared up at some point in time, is where I'm going with this, because we got the insurance back, and it was through our own policy, and it was not insured under the United Church.
Okay, just for clarification's sake, and I don't want to be stepping on toes, but yesterday there was a covenant ceremony, and it involves the United Church and appointment of a new minister for our community. And there was people within the United Church, within their own hierarchy, that attended. Our community belongs to a bigger organization beyond Saugeen, and that bigger organization flows money through here. So we can't be stepping on the bigger picture, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's the United Church of Canada. So with respect to that, it's a bigger organization than just what we're speaking about here.
Yeah, I think, I think historically we've had to insure those buildings, and that makes sense because any assets on reserve have to be communal assets, right? So they be held by the BAN, and that's why we had to insure them. But I think to Audra's point, yeah, there's that degree of autonomy we've always afforded to the churches, right? I think this is, as I understand it, the ad hoc committee was formed to work with folks there to do what we could to try and, if possible, resurrect that building or resurrect another building. And so I think that's what they're looking for, is there be support from council from doing that. And I think that's why it was ad hoc. And that's how my understanding is how it's functioned. It's just, are there things we can do? If there's a request to council to kind of help support them in that, then are we able to do that? And I think that's kind of the way it's been going. I've always, I thought, I had raised this a couple times, like, would the United Church at the national level be more involved with trying to help the group with resurrecting that building and supporting them in that, given that there's always been that congregation here. And so I've been meaning to have a conversation with John Othius about that, because he was part of the board. I think he still is part of the board, United Church of Canada board. So, but that's always something that's been a bit perplexing. But I think there's that autonomy we've always respected with all the churches. When they've asked for council support on certain things, then, we've taken that on a case-by-case basis. But that's my understanding how this ad hoc committee was formed, was to kind of help support them where we could support them in getting that building resurrected. I think that's where we were at.
If I may, Randall, it was an ad hoc committee because there was nothing in place at the time.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me, though, that the board of directors have finally, come together, and they've got their mandate, and they've got what they want to do with the church. Where administratively, just helping them financially and with the insurance piece. I think that's where it ends for us, because the ad hoc committee was only formed as a temporary committee, so I don't really see us really need the need for that committee that's there now. Obviously, the board of directors they've had their meeting, and now they're quite content to run it the way they want to, and I think our only function would be to help them administratively now, say with the insurance or any of those particulars going forward. I mean, I'm quite satisfied that the board of directors would take over now. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Obviously, we're kind of redundant in our position. We really don't need to be. We don't really have a role to play right now. Sounds to me like the church is up and running on its own again. And it was only to help kickstart the fundraising, I believe, and at the point, because there was nothing being done, the church was burnt. Council, there was a request from some of the church congregation to kickstart an ad hoc committee, which has brought the board of directors in full swing now at the church, United Church. So I think our job is done, really, just in a lot of respects.
Yeah, and okay, that's helpful. And I think if, I did speak with Janet briefly, just emailed her, we had some emails back and forth, and I said, if there's, happy to meet with folks, just let me know when everyone's available. And so I think she was gonna circle back with folks, but it sounds like they agree with Les. If they've got that stuff in order, then ours is more of an administrative function. If it's insurance and other things, then yeah, that's something where we've always kind of been hands off on the autonomy of the churches to do what they want to do, right? So obviously, if there's other requests that come up where they might need support from the council, then we take those on a case-by-case basis.
Just a quick question, so, not motion. So when we do they're doing the rebuild, right? That's separate? Mina?
Like, I mean, there was nothing in place a few years ago, like maybe whenever the church first burnt. And then obviously there was some conflicting parties in the congregation as well. There was the Quakem ladies, and they had their own agenda, and obviously the board of directors was already in place. So I think if anything, we were kind of stepping on toes where we shouldn't have been in some respects. We could have just minded our own business. So now that the board, I see that the board is up in full swing again. I mean, maybe that was all that was needed from our end, but it seems to me that even with the celebration yesterday for Janet, I mean sorry I didn't make that one, but it tells me that they're functioning on their own quite well. And I think we should just leave them be, really.
So just for clarity, then, the board of directors of the United Church will be responsible for the rebuild of the church?
That's what I'm hearing from the board. Okay. That's what I've heard constantly. That's the same message, I believe, that's been given to me already. So yes, I would say yes. That's the United Church Board of Directors want the responsibility of the church and the rebuild. I believe that's what I've been told.
Okay, that just wasn't clear before. And in terms of like the project being in and around 3 to 3.5 million, it was just something that I wanted to make sure that, there was clear lines as to who's responsible for what. Okay, well, with that being said, then that one would just be then dissolved from you two? With slight overview, or?
Would you dissolve it now without, they're still working on the rebuild, and so they still need to have their meetings. Am I not right? No? We just dissolve it?
Am I understanding correctly that the United Church said they're taking over the rebuild? I guess that's where we need clarity, because if they are, then we're out. if they're looking for us to help with the rebuild, then we need to be involved. So we need to know what's going on.
So, yeah, I think maybe that's just, I know Pat and Janet have reached out, and so we're, I think Janet said she'd get back to me with the dates when the rest of the committee would be available. So I'm hoping we can have one before the holidays, just to connect, to see where things are at, and then maybe we'll have a bit more clarity on that. And my sense is if they've already gone through the process of selecting their board of directors, then I would think that would be something they would take on. If they envision at some point they might come to us for some type of support, then that could be, we don't even necessarily have an ad hoc committee for that. It could just be a one-off, we consider it on a case-by-case basis. But I think what would be helpful is if we had an opportunity to sit with them and they can provide that clarity so we have that assurance, and then Les and I can bring that back and say, yeah, this is what we've heard, and I think they're ready to go. And so Janet was going to get back because she extended an invitation for us to attend. Yesterday I was in Toronto, so I couldn't make it. But so I think once we hear back about a date, then we'll get that. But I'll send a reminder out to her and maybe Pat, and just say, hey, just let us know when, and we'll try and get something together. Because I wasn't sure. I said, do you prefer in the evenings, in the day? And some people don't like meeting in the day. So, and then I think we'll get that clarity, and then just bring it back. And I'm quite fine with them doing it. I've always kind of on a personal level believe you support, you respect the autonomy of the churches and what everyone does. And if there's things that come up, then you deal with that case by case. But if they're ready to go, then hey, yeah, fill your boots. So yeah, maybe that's what we'll do. I was just saying we'll just get clarity. I'll circle back with Janet, see if they're able to meet with us before the holidays and get that clarification that if they feel like they're ready to go now that they have a board of directors, then we can bring that back to council, and then everyone's on the same page on that.
Okay. So I'm wondering for fisheries, I know that it hasn't really met much over the past few years, and that a lot of the good work being done in the departments are kind of more of a joint effort, territorial-wise. So I wasn't sure. I know it's a touchy subject sometimes in terms of, having a joint committee, but there's value in it because we share the territory and the waters around it. So, yeah, like I just don't, there's a joint fisheries committee, and then there's a internal one, but they don't really meet. I don't know what they do. Most of the work is kind of done with counselors and the departments. So like, is that committee really needed right now?
Yeah, Chief, I think, we didn't have much of a functional committee the last go around. So it was kind of sitting with Jut, and a lot of the work was kind of being done jointly. But I think, this one might require a bit more thought, only because we haven't always been aligned in our positions with NAWASH on the fisheries issue. And that's fine. That happens from time to time on the other files as well, where we have differences of opinion or different focus, right? And so, that's not to cast aspersions one way or the other. It's just we've always had those scenarios where we had different opinions. So fisheries has been one of those. I think the challenge we have now, and I think everyone's aware of this, is we don't have a fishery. The fisheries, in essence, collapsed because there's no more fish. And that's the issue. And so one of the things we're trying to do is force this issue with the Crown to say, hey, listen, this is a result of multiple failures on our part. We haven't overfished it, and we have all the data to support that. Because for a number of years, Saugeen and Nawash set the harvest levels based on our own data because MNR was too far behind. And then we scaled back because we seen something was going on, particularly in the main basin, that suggested we should be scaling back our harvest levels out of an abundance of caution. Meanwhile, in the South Main Basin, MNR continues to issue harvest levels to non-Indigenous fishermen without any regard to what's going on, as if somehow fish know lines, right? And we know sawn fish, if there's, are being caught down there because our team has tagged those fish and have been monitoring that. And so Jut and Ryan and others have been doing that work. And so we know that. And Clint as well they know that fish is being caught down there. And so clearly MNR is completely disregarding its own mandate, which is to ensure the conservation of the resource, and they're failing their constitutional obligations because you have to demonstrate you're giving priority to the rights holder, which is us. And they can't do that. And so that's a real problem. There's a lot of different things contributing to that decline in the fishery. You have climate change, increasing temperatures of the lake, invasive species, zebra mussels, other things, stocking of exotics, all other things all contribute. Bruce Power, the thermal plume, or cumulative effects of that over many, many years, all those things have been assessed. So that's the simple reality, is we just don't, our fisheries collapsed. I think maybe it might be worthwhile having a conversation with Justin to see if he would want to have a committee, because there's things he wants to do and he's working on. He would like, I think it'd be good if he had a committee to sound those things off. So there might still be value in out of that, because he's looking at what are some of the things we can do to restore the fishery. So he's looking at a hatchery, for example, but Nawash doesn't want to go down that path. So there we have diverging paths, and Jut's gone and got some funding for some of that stuff, but I think he may want to have a committee he can work with on some of those things if it's possible. But I think right now we've been doing most of that work jointly. Do I think if things are going to fall down if we don't have a committee right away? Absolutely not. But I don't know how many people have shown an interest to be part of it. It would be good, I think, to have folks there, but that's the simple reality where we're at right now.
Yeah, I see the Fisheries Committee, not even just the last term, but over the last few years, pretty redundant. We don't have a fisheries, like Randall said, and it's, I think, I mean, if we need to have our own committee, if, Jut's looking at hatchery, I guess that's something, but I think I see the whole thing as what it is. We have no fisheries, so I see it as a joint endeavor to address the government, to address MNR. I don't see it as, sorry, and I think it's just in my own head, I can't wrap my head around, what are we talking about here in Saugeen? We have no boats in the water, we have no, a hatchery, maybe, but even with a hatchery, if Nawash isn't on board, what are we doing? Like, I don't know. So it's kind of confusing, but I've seen Fisheries Committee, for years now, hasn't met, really. It hasn't been a functioning committee. I know Randall said over the past term, but for many, many terms, Fisheries has been a non-functioning committee. We can have it. We can have it officially, but that doesn't mean it ever runs. So, we can keep up the illusion, or we can address it, and if we do need one, then have one,
I think maybe we can think about that, Chief, a bit more around perhaps even having, there are some things too, I think would be value added from a strategic perspective, where we would want community members to be part of some of the conversations we're having around the fishery, not only internally, but also externally with other parties. I think that's always important, because I've come to the conclusion that we just, even if you had 20 counselors at each table, you still couldn't do all the work. So I think we have to be rethinking about how we build capacity for the work we do. And I think the best value is building capacity in your own people. invest in your own people, training up to do some of these things. So when we have negotiations, we have those types of things, start training your own people up to do that, to carry that. So you're not worried about relying on institutional memory, because not all of us are going to be here forever, right? And so some of us carry a lot of institutional knowledge on different things, right? And so if that knowledge is gone, then who picks that up, right? And so the best way to deal with that is start investing in your own people to start building that knowledge base up, but also train them to do some of those things, so that when you have those negotiations, you have, and those discussions, you have your own people doing that work. Because right now, we don't have the bodies, right? And we can put we can throw staff at it all we want, and you're still going to be chasing your tail, because these issues are just getting too big now. You know, when you think about how much time we invest in joint initiatives, right? Like I wasn't being cute when I said we spend, 6 days of, 5 days of the week invested in joint matters, and then maybe we meet 1 day a week for our community members, for our community. And that's an issue, right? And, just last week alone, I had a conversation with the office. Can you guys not coordinate the schedule so we're not tripping over things? So we had like 4 committee meetings planned on the same day, and then you got to hedge your bet. Which one do you go to? So do I go to Parks? Do I go to the Bruce Power Environment Assessment? Do I go to the fisheries? And then you're trying to do, and then you have a Saugeen committee that wants to meet too. So then how do you juggle all that? So even if you had 20 counselors, you still couldn't carry it out. It's not a question of more bodies. It's maybe we have to rethink about even our structure, how we and do some of that work. And so, because the files are getting more complex, they're just getting bigger and bigger, right? And so, and that's why I was a little bit annoyed when some people wanted to paint the leadership with it for the failure of what happened with NWMO. NWMO made that decision, not us. They chose to ignore their own process. They chose to ignore the standard they set, and they chose to go north. That's not through any fault of leadership. And I won't let that happen, because too many good leaders who are no longer here invested a lot of time and effort in that fight to get that consent. And so I don't care who it is. You want to throw your rocks, go ahead and throw your rocks, but I'll be the first one to call you out for doing it. Because that was NWMO's decision. But even on that file, you would have needed so many people to carry that ball. So I think that's kind of where we're at right now, and how you adjust that and address that is an issue. So there might be value added to consider maybe an ad hoc to bring people in on some of that work, if possible. But maybe that's some food for thought. I wouldn't just say we dissolve it right away, but maybe we can repurpose it. But maybe have a conversation with Justin to see. And I take Sonia's point. If it hasn't been functional for a while, then that's problematic. But is there other ways we can do it? Because I would sooner have more of our people invested in the big fight we're going to have around the fishery, because it's going to be a fight. It's not going to be an easy conversation we're going to have with both levels of government on that issue. So the more informed we can have certain people, the better. So just we'll talk about it some more, I'm sure.
Okay. So moving on, we do have a CAMH advisory committee. I'm not sure if it wasn't identified in the portfolio selections this term, so I'm not sure who sits on it here at the table. But I do know that they do a lot of stuff in the health and wellness kind of sector, so I think kind of building something that they communicate more effectively would be beneficial. But do we know who's on that specific committee at this time, or has certain people been allocated yet with the new term?
Yep. So that's a problem. Ningwa Kwao was working on that project from probably a few years back, 6 years ago. And so she's been working with our youth and people with lived experience and we're going through the evaluation process, and that's, we're gathering information. So that's ongoing.
I'm just wondering, was there certain counselors identified for that committee this term?
That was a project from Priscilla, so she reached out to people in the community. Yeah, it's not a council committee.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I just know that, well, they're doing work, so there was always counselors that sat on it. There was always 2 counselors that would keep the information within the community.
So right now, Audra and I sit on that committee.
I knew you were on there, I just wasn't sure if somebody else was appointed. And then the youth council, so one of the activities within the strategic plan is to explore, you know, having an elected youth council or identifying how a youth council can work in collaboration with the broader leadership table. So that is kind of more to be determined as we move forward with that idea.
Can I have a question around that? So Anthony, I think it's Anthony Ritchie, was he not a rep for youth committee that comes to, and I was hoping maybe we would have more youth involvement.
Oh, go ahead, Audra.
I was just wanting to add, like, there's a few different youth committees. There is the CAMH, the one we just spoke to. They have a youth factor to that. There is an IFN youth council, and we have members that attend that. That little Anthony, he's a busy little character, but he's on quite a few different committees on behalf of our youth. Shoshana as well attends several different committees on the provincial and national level. So there is more than one youth council in operation right now. And they're all pretty much self-determined and they operate on their own little mandate, this group. Oh, Leah. I think Leah is the other one that's involved in their group.
So I'm just wondering if maybe some of those ones that are on the different represented in different areas can maybe formulate like something together, maybe?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is just committees. I still got to go through the strategic plan and activities with you guys. But one of the activities within there that they identified when I had a chance to kind of just sneak in at the CAMH meeting they had was to form an actual youth council or see what one would look like, explore that. So that will be kind of, you know, future work to be done and explored over the next, you know, within the 5-year strategic plan. So that work will kind of, you know, be, I don't know who will be in charge of that or how that will formulate, but that's kind of the next phase of the strategic plan is identifying that piece, but it is an activity within it. So, so that, and then just kind of note to Faye, so these are some committees. You get to select which ones you get to hop on. And then, so I just did want to walk really quickly through the joint council committees because the Nuclear Advisory Committee, last term, there was 4 councilors, and it is a very, very big file. So there's still 1 vacancy there. And I would strongly suggest that somebody hop on to help with that, with all that workload. And then I did have a question about, and Lester, this is probably to you, the B2M Honey, is that a board structured kind of portfolio for the joint council? Or chief, maybe you know that?
Say, what was the question? Bruce
B2
DeMelt?
Yeah, is it a committee or is it like a board?
This is like a committee, eh? I think Lester and Letitia sit on there, and Paul, and I don't know who the other one is from NAWASH, but there is an anniversary for that this Friday. 10-year anniversary, I believe, on Friday.
Okay, I just wasn't, for some reason, I thought maybe it was a board structure, so I just wanted clarity on that. And then the medical isotopes, I believe Lester is on that specific committee, but he's the only one appointed, I believe, so there is a potential vacancy in that one.
Sheree,
I'd like to jump on that one, please.
which one was that?
The medical isotopes.
Oh, medical isotopes, okay, so we'll acknowledge that.
Thank you.
I think they're also trying to organize something, I think in the next year, within the next couple months. I think they were looking to coordinate more counselors or leaders that wanted to attend to see the actual facility in Germany, the medical isotopes facility. Just that was shared a while ago, so I'm just sharing with everybody here. Randall wants to go, he said. I'm just kidding. There's a big difference. Okay, so we'll acknowledge Sheree to sit on that committee, medical isotopes.
And then, yeah, so sorry, Teresa.
For the Parks Committee, there's Letitia, Randall, and it used to be Rochelle and myself. I know that for some reason my name didn't get on the list, but I am on the Parks Committee.
Okay, so we'll acknowledge Teresa as well to sit on that committee, Parks Committee. Okay.
Okay, so, and then the ham, that is a board, right, Les? Okay, so then there's kind of listed here the two boards, which is the Child and Family Wellbeing Board and their members, and then the Economic Development Corporation. We currently have 3 members and 2 vacancies, which I believe Brad will be bringing a briefing note in to you guys on those. And then I did just want to, we do have the Land Trust Holding Corporation as well, which the Board of Directors is the Joint Councils. So I just don't know if this new term also got a chance for the new councilors to re-sign onto that board or not, but I know that that was a process that usually is done for the new councilors. Okay, so Chief, you might want to reach out to, I don't know, which law? To one of the legals for the Land Trust Holding Corporation. So the newer councilors will need to sign on to that board because it's the Joint Chiefs and Councils on that board.
Okay, T, okay. Sonia?
Yeah, I'm just wondering too, if there's gonna be like a protocol, for like, committee processes. I noticed, well, because I know that we don't have most of our committees up and running because, you know, we're gonna get committee members and whatever. But I noticed too with the joint committees that I don't see invitations going out for meetings. Like I know that there's a couple of committees that I'm on that I didn't know there was meetings for until they were done. And then I also noticed that we don't really know about meetings unless somebody mentions it. So do we, like, I guess I'm looking for the protocol about invitations so that everybody is aware of all meetings all the time, and also minutes to committee meetings. Do those not come through council anymore? Because I haven't seen any, but I don't know if it's because our SOGI and committees aren't up and running yet. I know that the process used to be that the minutes from the committee meetings came through council to be passed. Is that still the process? Okay. So yeah, maybe it would be like Stephanie, John should be sending out invitations to all of the joint committees? I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I can highlight that. Maybe I'll follow up with that later on today, just to make a little note there around the schedules of the committee, the joint committee meeting, and perhaps if there's minutes there that can be shared as well. Usually when we have joint council, sometimes they'll come in and brief as well, so, but we haven't seen that for a while, so maybe I'll send a little note to her later on today, so.
Yeah, because I figure Stephanie has a list of all the joint committees and who's on them and when they're meeting, so she should, I think it would fall under her job description to send out those invites to all of the pertaining, like the members that it pertains to, I hope. I just don't like missing committee meetings, because I don't know about them, I guess.
Okay, so, yeah, and the purpose of me doing this is just to kind of like, pull all this information together, and then I can kind of compile it in more of a, easy, accessible way. And so that, there's something like, sort of like an onboarding orientation package. I'm slowly kind of trying to pull that together for any future councils or just information where pulled together where it's, if it's requested. So any further questions on the committees? We went through all those documents.
Thank you for that. Just wanted to let you know that this has been years that we've needed these mandates and stuff, so I think it's great that we're finally getting them.
Okay, so my next agenda item is the capital planning study update. I just wanted to give you guys a brief update on that. So we did get an extension for submitting the information that we needed to get that final approval for the funding. We got it extended into January. We do have a terms of reference out on Merck's right now. So we're getting some questions back and potential. And people will be submitting, I assume, for proposals. So we do have the final terms of reference up on Merck's. There is already one addendum added to it. We extended the deadline. It was initially going to be December 19th, but we had a request to extend it. And as it wouldn't have adjusted our timelines significantly, so we granted that. So the closing of that will be, I believe, January 7th. And then we will go through those proposals and score them and select one and bring to council, the 3rd or 4th week of January. And then once we select that, then we can submit all the information to ISC, and then they would kind of either they would confirm that those dollars to proceed with that work. Any questions on the capital planning study? Okay, so then we've got, so I took the liberty to kind of take a peek at this 20-year strategic plan, and I took a guesstimate that it was maybe kind of completed in and around 2005. Does anybody know? Randall, Les? I'm trying to guess when this was done. There's a year there that kind of says, I'm guessing 2005.
I believe that was done in 2004, 2005, Chief? Because when I came into office in 2006, they had just put it up on the wall. So I'm going to say it was 2004, 2005. Yeah, exactly. The mind is still sharp, though. Don't let the buzzed hair fool you.
So I pulled together the information in that into a document just to kind of, have an overview, because, that is now 20 years old. The 20-year strategic plan is now 20 years. And I just kind of identified, the current status, so like where we're at in terms of those goals. And some of the things we have successfully completed but it was just interesting exercise for me as I was kind of going through the 5-year strategic plan and kind of thinking about the capital planning study. Some of the things that are, still kind of relevant, some things that, are kind of already identified within our 5-year strategic plan. So this was just kind of more of an interesting activity for myself, and I thought it would be a good read for you guys to kind of take a peek at, where we were at 20 years ago, where we're at today, and what some of these things have been already identified in the 5-year strategic plan that we've pulled together here. So I did want to kind of highlight one thing here, though, is so the band governance one, as this would be kind of the things that would be the work of this table, would, even 20 years ago, it was to confirm and advance Saugeen First Nation self-government plans, complete and develop the governance codes, review operational structures, which, we just kind of passed some things today that kind of help with that. So that's great. And then as well, there was under the lands and the housing, complete the land claim process and establish a plan for settlement of lands and money. So that is one of the activities in the leadership priority within the plan. I did kind of pull that out of here and put them into this plan because I think they're still really relevant in terms of, having those conversations now that we've completed these 2 huge land claims. There hasn't been much work or discussion with community on how we're going to move forward with any settlements or what that looks like, and I think that it's really important that we start doing that work. And then additionally, we have gotten lands back, and they're all in the holding trust, but 20 years ago, it was the idea to start increasing the land base and looking at the additions to reserve policy and doing that work, and we have yet to do that. So I think that's another important one for the leadership to get moving on, and that was identified 20 years ago, so. Sorry, I don't mean to sound. It's hard, I just feel like Chief and Council are always reacting to things, right? And it's really hard to kind of take the time and be able to do that proactive stuff. But that's, kind of why it's important that we have the strategic plan now. And so now I'll kind of dive into that. So it's been, I've had really good feedback, especially from the staff about this plan in terms of feeling like that they have more of a direction and that they're working more collaboratively. So the feedback to date that I've gotten from the strategic plan has been all positive, and I've included all the feedback into the plan to kind of build it more out. So what I've originally did, what we've done is we had multiple engagements a few years back with community that helped build a little, a piece of the priorities and the activities. So what I did is I took that work done and kind of updated it to reflect the realities and landscape of today, and then also included the work that we did with Pan Hubbard last term with the graphic facilitator that you can see. I've reposted those pictures up and kind of pulled all together to create the first draft of the plan. And then I've gone out and done some sessions and had some feedback and have been building it in. And so what's within your package is how that has all come together at this point. So before I really dive into it, does anybody have any thoughts, suggestions, or questions on the plan and right now? Okay, so I'll just walk you through it then. So, you got the little bit of agenda there. Should I be screen sharing maybe? You want me to screen share? Okay, hang on a sec. Okie dokie. So this is what we're going to walk through today. So first, we kind of have just a brief message. We are committed to creating an open and honest dialogue, moving through our differences, and working together as a team to create a strong leadership for our community. We want to walk together with membership to explore traditional governance and begin creating solutions and opportunities to the issues we face today. So what is the strategic plan? A strategic plan identifies the destination of where we want our nation to be and provides chief and council and the administration with directions as to how to get there. It is our plan that reflects the needs and priorities of our members and the vision of our nation. It provides a guide to help us work together, stay true to our values, and be more accountable and transparent to our membership. The strategic plan guides our decision-making, helps evaluate progress towards our goals, and monitor the performance of our nation's administration. Our goal through this 5-year strategic plan is to begin empowering our administration to carry out the necessary activities and goals required to assist our community in achieving our vision for the future, thus providing improved programming and services to our membership and becoming more accountable as leaders. So this is the graphic of the vision that we completed last term with Pam. And I think it's a nice one. I think I like the visual aspect of it instead of just like a blurb. So it's been well received. Our mission, working together and engaging the membership of Saugeen to provide strong governance and the enhancement of culture, language, community, relationships, and programming. By moving forward together in a positive and harmonious way, we can create opportunities for growth and development of a safer, healthier, and more sustainable community. So that was loosely drafted, and I kind of pulled more of the ideas together that we kind of did when we did the graphic facilitation workshops last term. So our values, the 7 grandfather teachings, wisdom, to acknowledge our past, present, and future and continue to learn and grow from it. Love, to have kindness for all creation and strive for community healing and wellness. Respect, to acknowledge all voices and give patience and understanding to all. Bravery, to trust oneself to make decisions that are for the best interests of the community as a whole. Honesty, to provide transparency through effective communication. Humility, to be accountable, recognizing strengths and weaknesses, and practicing self-reflection. And truth, to know our identity, culture, and language, and carry these teachings with us. So I did think that it was valuable and really important to kind of have a really brief overview of our history in both the presentation as well as the summary, and within this plan, I think it's important for us to always acknowledge that history and make it more aware and prominent in our documents. So this is just a quick overview. Randall, if you want to kind of do a brief, not this second, but like if you do want to take a peek at it, just to make sure I captured things properly. I did the best that I could with the resources that I had, so, but I'll leave that one with you. And then, yeah, just our location, our population, as of about a month ago, was about 2,002 registered members. Is that still the case, Faye? 2,002 registered members? Right now? Yeah. No, we've grown. Okay, so we've already grown, and that was only about a month and a half ago that I got that number, so.
And a few more babies.
Oh, 2022, okay, I will update that.
Has anyone checked Service Canada for our numbers? And are they accurate reflection of our numbers?
Like Census Canada?
Sometimes that we don't have, maybe our numbers are lowest, or maybe they're higher than what the government has. Maybe our numbers are higher and the government doesn't have those numbers, the same number.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think it's different too because these are registered, so that's both on and off reserve. And usually when it comes to certain things, it's reflected, but.
I guess maybe you just need somebody to look into that, and I don't know who could do that, but to make sure our numbers are accurate.
I have access to the Indian registry system, so I can check it every day. I still have access. So that number of 2022, that's an actual up-to-date as of Friday.
I was at a meeting and they were talking about the numbers, and they had the numbers there, but by the time we got to the where we were able to get those numbers, they had already gone, the government people, and that was within the last 2 months, I think, last month.
So the numbers that I can access are actual up-to-date.
Okay, so moving on more into the First Nation profile. This is our chief and council, our senior management team, our programs and departments. And then we've got, the work kind of graphic here. Looking back, I really liked this graphic when we did this work because it really demonstrates and kind of shows you, all the things that we've been dealing with over the past 5 to 7 years, and what has, positioned us in this place right now. And you can see at the end of the graphic how everything is just, getting more and more and more. And so I just thought that it was really important that the community see that and that we kind of include that in the presentation and the strategic plan. So even though we've had some struggles, we have had some good achievements over the last 5 years, such as the Eastern Boundary Land Claim, Treaty 72, the OPG DGR vote, the construction of the governance building and the ball diamonds. We've had internet infrastructure upgrades, increase in our housing stock, increased health and wellness resources, hospice-like space built, and the ratification of Zagawin Child and Family Wellbeing Law. So this is the other graphic of just our current state, our current landscape, identifying the possibilities, opportunities, successes, and strengths, and the trends. Also, while I was pulling, all this information together and compiling this, a lot of the conversations that were had when we were completing these graphics was really kind of within my head in terms of making sure that they were reflected in this strategic plan. So our current state, our strengths are connection to the land and water, youth and elders, language, culture, and history, stewardship, recognition and assertion of territory, knowledge keepers, leadership past and present, families and connection, health and wellness resources, infrastructure, negotiators are smart and strong, and reassertion of our child welfare. Our weaknesses are opioid crisis and overdoses, lack of policing restricted under the Indian Act, length of leadership term creates inconsistency, lack of members in the workplace, dependency, lack of funding, inadequate and lack of enough housing, segregation, human resource capacity, still catching up after COVID, and always reactive versus proactive. However, with those weaknesses, these are the opportunities: creating a treatment facility within the territory, reestablishing partnership with APS, implementation of laws and codes, succession planning, headhunting our own band members, increased levels of education, building local economy, business and tourism, accessing funding and increasing OSR, increased housing inspections and policies, building our own school, internal and external collaborations, short and long-term planning. And then our threats are opioid crisis, increased crime and safety concerns, increased presence of non-members in community, inflation, Bill C-53, recognition of Métis, federal government commitment to nuclear energy, safe long-term storage of nuclear waste, land claim appeals, but I can maybe adjust that one now. Increased proponent activity in our territory, intergenerational trauma, and homelessness. I'm just going to note that. I'm just going to edit that. Okay. So based on our analysis and review of our mission, or our vision and mission for our nation, the values that we want to live by, acknowledgement of our challenges and successes of the past, our current state, and conversations with membership, council, and administration, we've identified 8 key priorities and supporting activities that will propel our nation forward towards achieving the aspirations and hopes for our nation. This is just kind of a graphic as summarizing what I just said. So the 8 strategic priorities are economic development, health and wellness, education, training, and employment, jurisdiction, land and community safety, housing and infrastructure, elders, language and culture, leadership, and youth. So under economic development, the goal would be to generate enough revenue to be self-sustaining. The activities within would be finalize the Economic Development Strategic Plan, revitalize the Economic Development Corporation, secure funding and complete the amphitheater rehabilitation, update and implement the Sauble Park Beach operational strategy, incorporating North Sauble into the strategy, begin feasibility study on Sauble Park Tourism Hub, revisit the Village Saugeen Story Report, explore opportunity for new relocated Saugeen Gas Bar with addition of a Tim Hortons, expand the IBA and entrepreneurship opportunities within the community, and create business plan and explore funding for wedding venue, the Amphitheater Church site. Health and wellness, the goal is all Saugeen members are healthy and active and have access to holistic healing and wellness services, inclusive of Western approaches that empower them to achieve their personal wellness goals. Activities within would be revisit the Food Sustainability Hub, complete environmental scan and needs assessment to identify existing gaps, explore opportunities for medical equipment such as ultrasounds, x-rays, dialysis, improve relationships with hospitals to improve quality of service provided, explore funding to territory treatment facility, secure funding and implement the Saugeen Trail Development Plan, maximize access to external funding, and develop a health strategic plan. Next is education, training, and employment. The goal is education, training, and employment is culturally relevant, community-based, encourages strong graduation rates, a skilled labor force, and develops role models within the community to encourage and inspire our youth. Activities within is update education policy, continue enhancing relationships with schools, offering more resources to students, enhance educational awareness, collaborate with educational institutes for training opportunities and community, create fund to support student and trades, private colleges, begin feasibility study for community school, finalize renovations at the training center for enhanced programming space, and customize membership recruitment and retention plan for SFN hiring. So jurisdiction, land, and community safety. The goal is implementing the ratification process on the areas of law we want to move away from the Indian Act and improve our ability to provide emergency services and community safety. Activities are revisit the Land Management Act, continue advocating for police funding and finalization of renewed partnership with APS, explore own restorative court systems, reducing speed limits in residential areas, establish membership and residency codes, full assertion and finalization of the child and family well-being law, develop a land use plan, implementation of safety and emergency services plan, and implementation of SFN Emergency Management Strategic Plan. Infrastructure and housing, the development of a plan and timeline for infrastructure development based on community needs that is not impacted by change in leadership and increase housing opportunities. So activities within is secure funding and complete a comprehensive capital planning study, revitalize the operations and infrastructure committee, develop process for capital projects, finalize housing strategic plan and begin implementation, construct 4 new houses a year, finalize closure of landfill and construction of transfer station, explore infrastructure to enhance economic opportunities, upgrade current infrastructure, such as the like Cottager Roads, 2nd Ave and 16th Street, install infrastructure to Nipissing subdivision for 36 housing lots, install infrastructure to phase 3 of multiplex, construct 12 rental units at the multiplex. Elders, language, and culture. So the goal is pride and empowerment through knowledge of culture, identity, history, language, and spirituality, taking care of our elders and fostering their knowledge. Activities, implement cultural safety and cultural sensitivity for all staff and organizations working with SFN. Create committee of knowledge keepers to be a resource to all programs, staff, students, and members of SFN. Include language and culture in all program mandates, work plans, scopes of work, including committees. Review existing cultural plan from 2010 and update to reflect new cultural building and programming. Revert old band office to original structure. Explore naming it as a historical site. Implement fund to support 2 to 4 community members to attend full immersion language program. Reintegrate language program for staff and community. Expand powwow grounds. Fundraising for the rebuild of the Wesley United Church. Explore development of nursing home and long-term palliative care facility. So leadership is Saugeen First Nation has strong united leadership who are respectable, committed, qualified, and have knowledge of our history. There is open and continued communication between leaders, staff, and community. Activities within would be develop and implement chief and council orientation package, develop and implement administration orientation package, committees to meet monthly, host quarterly community meetings, ratify governance law and election code, all council and staff to follow policies and organizational structure, implementation of strategic plan by all, develop terms of reference for committees and align with departmental reorganization, identifying lengths of the term, which we just kind of accomplished today, woohoo. community engagement on land claim settlements, and initiate additions to reserve process, and wealth management plan. So the last priority, last but not least, is the youth. The goal is to provide safe and healthy spaces for youth to grow and excel, and to integrate youth governance as part of our overall governance systems. So activities within is to build a robust child and family well-being program, construction of a new child and family well-being facility, upgrades and renovations to the rec center, increase housing for youth or single members. These last three are the ones that youth specifically identified, is the housing for youth, creation of a youth hub, and explore how to implement an elected youth council to work in collaboration with chief and council. So how strategic plan activities will be implemented. So once these are kind of finalized, which I'm hoping that we can kind of pass by way of resolution today, the next kind of step would then be, we'd be working with administration and departments to kind of action out these items over the next 5 years in terms of how that looks to them and what makes sense. And so that would be kind of built into their yearly work plans and into the yearly budgets and any kind of capital plans and multi-year financial plans. And then so reporting to membership, council will include an update on our performance towards our strategic priorities in each annual report prepared for our members. The annual update will include at a minimum the following information. So performance highlights, analysis of goals and objectives, financial statements, supporting notes, photos and graphics, auditor's report, and financial information summary. So regularly, we've kind of fallen behind because we're still playing catch up, but regularly each year, they would normally do like a financial annual report anyways. So this, we can kind of capture all of the things, we can identify, oh, we've been able to do this, and this is where we are in certain things. And so that it can be one meeting that all of that information is captured. And then it just kind of helps really create that kind of accountability back to membership in terms of like, once you have those goals set out and those activities, then you can kind of report back and be like, we were able to do this and we were able to do this. And then it will feel like that things are really being done, because I think that there's a misconception out there that nothing is getting done. And sometimes it feels like that even at this table, but we know that there is work getting done. And so I think that that's what I really, have hopes for with this plan, is that it identifies that kind of roadmap for administration. It sets those expectations for community members and leadership and administration, and then it allows that, effective communication and reporting back, and it'll begin to build that trust back with community, I feel like. So, yeah, so that's it for the presentation. That's the presentation. I've done a video presentation of that and posted it online and shared it. I did a community meeting here, and I've done a program managers meeting presenting that. And then I've also had information booths where I was kind of just handing out the summary. So this is the summary document. I'm sure you guys have seen it. I've sent it out to you guys multiple times. And that kind of, so those are kind of all of the activities, priorities and activities within each priority that have, that I feel like is now finalized after the community engagement done so far. So what I would ask of you today is to accept this plan as presented, and then I can, update this other summary document and plan for the final community presentation, which will be December 19th, through having conversations with staff and community. It just made sense that would be more of an open house setting. I could still do certain times of this presentation, but we're also kind of inviting staff and departments to come set up booths there, because a lot of the activities within these priorities or other plans, right? And then so if people have questions like, for instance, oh, what's the economic development strategic plan? Like Brad has that and he can kind of talk with people about it. And then it would be a really good information session for community to really understand what all this means. And because I can't answer all those questions. So having, booths set up and having it more of a, collaborative effort with all with the administrative departments there is what is going to be happening on December 19th. And then that's how we would wrap it up in terms of community engagement. And then after that, it would just be, us working with the staff to kind of action item all of this out into work plans and finance and budgets, and then, and then the regular reporting back to the community each year. I'm going to stop sharing.
So December 19th is a community engagement?
Yeah, it's the final kind of presentation of the strategic plan.
Can we maybe host another one in January? It's just, I'm thinking of the 19th is December, families are out, probably Christmas shopping or whatever, their minds are elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I definitely wanted to do that. We'll do this initial one, and then I think once we work with the departments and map out the action plan in terms of when these activities will be done in which year, then I wanted to present it again so that the community can see like which activity is being focused on each year kind of thing too. So, yeah.
Is your presentation done now?
So, yeah, I'm done. If there's no questions, then I just kind of ask that you guys accept this, and then I can finalize everything and prepare for the next presentation of this.
Okay. So is there any other questions or feedback from Melissa, Sonia?
Just some feedback. I think that's, for the short time that you've been in this position, I think that's amazing work. So thank you so much.
Okay. So I don't think there's any questions or feedback, Melissa, but council heard the presentation and acknowledges.
Can I get a BCR, though? I'd prefer
BCR?
BCR.
Yep.
It would just kind of make it feel more set.
Official? Okay. Is there a mover to accept that strategic plan? Cherie? Is there a seconder? Sonia? Is there any other feedback, comment, any opposition? I'm seeing or hearing none, so that motion will carry.
Yay. I also just want to say, I don't know that Saugeen has ever had a 5-year strategic plan. So, like, it's a exciting thing, I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank
I'll
you.
stop being a dork now. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. So it is almost, well, it's past lunch, but I was gonna say that we can maybe pay some of the bills and we'll break for lunch. I just have to take a little meeting after for a little bit, but I'll do that during lunch while everybody's away, so. But,
Any chance we could just work straight through and get the whole thing done and then
What's that?
adjourn? Any chance we could just work straight
well,
through?
if Randall wants to chair, I just have
Oh.
to step out for a little bit, just to do something, but it shouldn't be too long, maybe 45 minutes or so.
Just because I know everybody has to be on the road later?
Oh, yeah, for Collingwood, eh? So. Okay, is there a mover to pay the Bruce Gray Catholic District School Board invoice? Send the budget. Randall. Seconder, Cherie. Any questions? Any opposition? I'm seeing none, so that motion will carry. The next invoice we have here, OKT, will combine all the invoices there into one. Is there a mover to pay that invoice for OKT. It's in the budget. Sonia? Is there a seconder? Teresa? Any questions, comments, any opposition? One declined to vote, Randall? So that motion will carry. The next set of bills is for PST. Is there a mover to pay that invoice? Teresa? Is there a seconder? Cherie? Okay, is there any other questions, comments? Any opposition? One declined to vote, Randall. So that motion will carry. So the bills are paid. Well, I think there's a bit of agenda that could, I don't know, did you want to chair for a little bit, Randall? Do you mind chairing to? I shouldn't be too long, maybe about 45 minutes or so.
It was a train wreck the last time, Chief.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's fine, that's fine, yeah.
So I just got to step out for a little bit, but I'll be back. So we'll appoint Randall as a chair, Sonia, seconder, Teresa. So Randall will chair till we get back, till I get back.
Okay, Chief. Never too late for a kind gesture. All right. Okay, so we paid the bills. Jerry, did we have, want to deal with the housing matters then? We have.
Sure. I just messaged John to ask if he's able to come down. I might just be missing him for lunch break. But the information's attached to your agenda in attachment M. And I'll start to provide a bit of an overview, but I probably will provide a disservice, so I can just try to float this for a minute. What sort of teed up the presentation for today from housing is that there was some money that was left on the table from ISK. And I believe, if I understand correctly, it's about $440,000 that we would be eligible for. And it can only be used to renovate existing band-owned properties. And so we do know that the previous council had provided direction that we would look to close down Village Road apartments because of the legacy issues that were there. But in discussion with the contractors and John, who's an architect, he's had a few thoughts on his initial inspection. It would be that, one of the reasons why we're having difficulty maintaining the asset is that, we're in some significant arrears, and so there's just no money in a kitty. And outside of the HVAC flow and some of the water remediation around the buildings have not been properly established. And he said he feels that's why it's leading to some of the mold issues we've been experiencing for quite some time. And so his thought would be that if council had motivation and if there's already a mindset to essentially demolish those buildings at some point, for this money that's on the table right now that can only be used for this intended purpose, would council allow us to have sort of one of the fourplexes, for lack of better words, and invest some of the funding to do it right from what the architects and engineers have recommended, gut it back to the studs and do it right. And then if we are able to do that, then we are increasing our housing stock. And we had a recommendation that if we were to consider upstream to tear down or decommission those buildings, that we would be leveraging any asset that we'd have right now, because right now, while it's still standing, it's worth something to somebody. If we demolish it, it's really nothing, not worth, the property's not really of any value. So I do believe that a few weeks ago, or about a couple months ago, John had submitted an application for the $440,000. And we thought, well, this is just a gift horse. If we get approved, we're no further, if we don't get approved, no further ahead. If we get approved, we're going to tear down the building anyways. Let us sort of have our fun and try to see if we can make it work. And then if we can build a proof of concept, then we'd be able to get some other funding from IS, because it's a sort of cyclical fund for up to 3 years, I believe. So maybe I'll pause there. I know that's probably a huge disservice to what John would provide council in terms of a presentation, and in his absence, that's what I understand he was working towards, and then he was able to successfully get approved for $440,000, and it was through that lens that we could update and rehab some of our existing housing stocks so we can get more people in shelters. But we want to bring that to the table here, and I hope I'm not doing a disservice, but that's my understanding of this.
Right, Sonia?
Yeah, it sounds like a no-brainer. I mean, why wouldn't we?
In terms of approach, is there going to be, is there going to be kind of a detailed kind of plan brought forward about next steps and what's going to happen there?
Yes, I do believe so. The reason why this is being brought forward today is that it was a time-sensitive issue with IS, just to understand if we're going to accept it. And so if that is the consensus of council, then I can connect with John offline to say that council has supported this. For IS, contingent on him bringing back a comprehensive report so you know exactly where those funds will be allocated. Because it does say in year 1, 2, and 3, 10 homes, 10 homes, 10 homes, 10 homes. But some of the criteria when we look at, Section 95 housing, other, a home, it's sort of loosely defined in some areas. And so whether it's a home structure or if it's an apartment building, we're pretty confident that we'll be able to rehab the one unit to what get an own sound. So if council support of this, then if there's time today before council ends, then John can come in and correct anything that I misspoke to. But if not, certainly I'd be bringing him back at the next council meeting with a more comprehensive update in terms of how the money will be used.
And there would be a costing to that too as well?
I believe so. I think that he had some preliminary figures that we just sort of threw mud on the wall just to see if we can submit something in. And at one point it was thought like maybe between $30,000 and $50,000 per unit to sort of bring it back and gut it. Obviously there might be some variable there, but yes, that would be our next steps, Chair.
So you're thinking of gutting the building. What about on the outside? Is there any plans for the outside?
Yeah, I think what we're hoping for, and not speaking for John, because I could be doing a lot of talking and getting this completely wrong, but it's my understanding that we would really try to do a bit of a proof of concept, because not only is the interior tired, the outside needs a facelift as well. Everything from like landscaping, environmental design.
I guess I was more thinking about the basement part.
That I probably should leave for John to speak to, but it was my understanding that they would sort of gut it all back and be able to keep the bones, and I think that would have included the basement, but I don't want to overspeak in case I'm wrong.
I guess I was wondering if they're going to re-parge it or whatever that is, or putting some other, I forget what you call that, when you put, it saves on your electrical bill. It's the exterior that you put in there. Well, that too, but there's that, I think we got some funds not very long ago, a few years ago, and it was to cut costs down on buildings. What was that, Tom? I thought it was hydro something. I can't think of it.
I know what you're talking about, it's escaping, but yeah, there's some type of hydro or electrical sort of efficiency. It's escaping me too, but you're right, we did get a grant to evaluate and look at these things. Geothermal? Okay.
Shri?
I was at a housing meeting with John last week, so we talked about some of this, and I know that the basement, because I was asking kind of the same thing, if the basements were like, if everything was going to stay the same, and he said yes. The difference would be that, of course, the septic would be its own, because I think that's been a real issue for many years in that building. So it'd be separated from the singles complex.
Thanks for that, the septic, that was the important part.
Okay.
So is septic part of the 400? 400?
I'd have to double check, but I believe the funding is for the full scope of the project.
Help me understand which specific building you're talking about, or are you talking about multiple buildings?
I'd have to double check with John, but if I'm looking straight at the Wigwas apartment, I think, Nance lived on the one side, then we have the middle. I think that we're looking at the side that might have had Bernice Thompson in. I think either one of those, but I feel like that was sort of the department that we're looking to start. And then if we're able to successfully produce that proof of concept, any additional funds that we can get, we just move people over, then rehab the other side, and hopefully keep going until we can beautify that neighborhood. That's my understanding, but I could be mistaken. No, Sheree, if you have a sense.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said he wanted to start on the one side, and those, I think it's only Deidre maybe that's going to be in there. So she would remain in her apartment until such time as those ones would be done, and then she would switch over, and then they would start on that side. And then the middle unit would stay as one unit like it is now. So basically it would be the same building, except it would be totally gutted and up to code and redone. So because these funds are specifically for renovation, not new build, and so that's why those funds would be perfect for something like this. And when John was talking to, I think, Chuck from, yes, they came to the conclusion that the bones in the complex were really, really good still, so that the renovation dollars could just enhance everything else.
Okay, so it sounds like what we need then is kind of a scope of what's entailed there. And then I guess there'll be, at that point, once we have that information, there'll be a final determination by the council on how to proceed at that point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think if, unless like John just mentioned, he just ran out to get a coffee, but yeah, if council had a thought to support the 440,000, I think to Councillor Ursur's comment that housing would recommend that they would start on that side of the Wigwas and bring it back to the studs and do it the right way, but then bring back to council the full scope and costing and what all the work would entail within short order.
So, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, Audra?
Just a quick little comment I was wanting to throw out there was just, I think you've already touched on it though. I was thinking 400,000 is just gonna scratch, the cost of what it's going to cost to renovate that building. So I'm wondering, where do we find the other monies?
Yes, so that is something that we're definitely cognizant of. Is like $500,000 is not going to go a long way, but in terms of that building, I think it would get us a pretty good start to rehab it. Now, John and I were sort of tag teaming here a bit in terms of separate funding. So that is the one pot of funding from IS. Now we haven't heard yet, but we're supposed to have a line of sight before the end of this calendar month that we'd have another pot of funding that would be a bit of a windfall through the health side of things. It's specific for the Heart Hub, so the homeless addiction recovery treatment. So what we're building out with the health in that refresh model, we have to use that funding at least $1.5 million in each year 1, 2, and 3 for supported housing specifically for these clients. And so what housing is proposing was that some of that funding, if we get approved, then we can really hit the ground running for that whole neighborhood over there. But I'll shut up, John. I was doing hopefully not a disservice to you, but I think there's some poignant comments from council, and I'll shut up, and you're better prepared to answer than I am.
Okay, all right. The peanut gallery is resigning, so we'll turn it over to John.
I don't know if I'm any better. So in September, ISC sent a letter to conditionally approve us for $440,000 dollars of funding for this year and for the next 5 years. And it's targeted for renovations only. So what I did was went and took a look at Weeguas as a potential project under this funding. And I went there with Habitat and also with the building inspector that we use. And we all agreed that the building actually is in pretty good shape, like the bones of it. And with some deep renovation, we could bring it back online and have some much needed units available for Saugeen. Excuse me, I just ran here. Habitat provided a quote, which is in your briefing note package, for between $70,000 and $80,000 per unit. What really needs to happen there is close to a full gut to pull out the plumbing and electrical and upgrade that, and then repair the walls and finishes. So if we did all 9 units, then we're going to be in between 600 and 740,000. So with the initial grant of 440,000, we would require an extra 200,000 to 300,000. I talked to Lisa Bender about that, and she recommended that we propose to use Saugeen's own source revenue to complete the full renovation. I brought this up fairly urgently because ISC did ask that we have a commitment for that extra funding gap by the end of the month. So that's why I'm here today.
Any questions from council for John? Okay, so one of the discussions before you came in, John, was perhaps what we could do today is acknowledge what's been brought forward, recognizing that there's some more work to be done, and perhaps a more detailed plan of kind of the next steps and the costing that could come back to council. And then at that point, then we would, I think, probably do a formal resolution at that point. Does that make sense then? We would acknowledge that you go forward, do the work based on what's been presented today, and then a more detailed plan could come back. Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah. So a little more detail from Habitat in terms of what they're proposing to do.
Yeah, I think
and
more
the
like
scope of work.
Yeah, scope of work, next steps, and I think more importantly the costing.
Okay.
So if we're see that, then I think we're in a better position.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
So, go ahead, Sonny.
I'm just wondering, I know he needs it by the end of the month. So is that for next week you're asking him? I just don't want to leave it, and then if we don't get quorum, before Christmas, I'm a little worried, I'm a little skeptical that I kind of know what happens here before Christmas. But I'm also gonna throw out there
You
that
already had his sunny vacation.
I'm only looking at Les because I know he knows what I'm talking about. But I'm just thinking too that we do what Tisha presented there with when we were doing the interest distribution from NWMO. There was 1.2 million, so maybe that's where we could. Just another suggestion, because I'm just really worried if we don't have quorum before Christmas. That I don't want this to get away from us.
Okay, so hearing that, maybe what we could do, I think what you need then is some direction so that you can obviously respond to ISC saying, we're going to utilize these dollars for this purpose, recognizing that there'll probably have to be a more detailed plan and costing. We'll come back to council, but for now, we need something so you can signal that to ISC. So I think that we could do by resolution, recognizing that we would approve the utilization of those funds for that purpose, recognizing a more detailed plan and next steps and costing would come back to council. I think that would be your resolution. Does that make sense then? And that would address, then you would have a resolution that you could then go back and work on, recognizing there's some parameters on that and you could come back, but it gets you what you need to get done with this by the end of the fiscal year, by end of December. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds really good.
Okay.
Yeah, brilliant.
All right, do we have a mover then for that? Sonia? Seconder? Teresa? Any questions or discussion then? Okay. Seeing none, if there's no opposition, all right, that motion will carry then. Okay, excellent, right on. Thanks, John. Right on. Okay, sounds good. All right, so that's perfect. All right, thank you, John. Thank you so much. Okay, I believe we have just, we're, sorry? Okay. So we are, I believe we have some in-camera items. So we will, we're not online, are we? Okay.
And we'll double check.
Yeah. I'm gonna wait for like an hour and just